Hi, everybody. This is Todd Creager, and today I'm talking to you about causes of a sexless marriage. As a therapist that works a lot with couples, that's one of the biggest reasons people call me is that they have one or both partners are frustrated because of a lack of sexual connection, lack of touch, lack of intimacy, and it's a common problem. Most couples, at some point in their lives, they didn't have that problem. Most couples in the beginning of the relationship uh, just totally fell in love. So, and with that, there was lust and there was desire. And for many couples, though, that begins to wane. And we're going to talk about over the next uh, period of time, I'll be talking about what to do in these situations. Today, I just want to speak to different factors and see if any of these factors resonate with you. It's very important for my people to look deeply into things, not just to label it as, my partner doesn't care about sex, or our relationship just doesn't work sexually, or I don't know, there's something that's missing. People talk in very vague, generic ways, and oftentimes they need to take a closer look about what really is going on. That is the only way to rekindle. So I'm going to talk about mainly four different categories, factors. One is stress factors, one are medical issues, one is emotional disconnect, and then the last is unresolved conflict. That is related, of course, to emotional disconnect. But this is when people have had one or multiple things that have happened where they haven't resolved it. So I'm going to talk about that last. But um, again, the important thing here is to not label yourselves and to not see it as a fixed thing that really we need to understand the deeper reasons. It's always about that. It's always about looking at what might be going on. And then we have the knowledge as well as the courage and the fortitude to apply the solution. So, stress. One of the things that is really clear in the beginning of relationships is there's a chemical thing that goes on. I've talked about this in a few videos in the past, in a few talks in the past, but it's really about that in the beginning of relationships, that testosterone goes up in the very beginning, and they call it the lust phase. Testosterone goes up. I lust after you, and dopamine also can go up. That's a neurotransmitter. Testosterone is a hormone, and those are elevated in the man and the woman. And so from there, you have the next stage, and they call that the romance stage. The romance stage, and it can last for a while. I mean, these are all approximate things. The romance stage could last, just several months into the relationship, and it could be a year, it could be 2 years, it could be even more. But typically, it's finite. And in that, the testosterone um, in the women might go down a bit, but you still have the dopamine, the serotonin, and the norepinephrine. Three really, what we call happy neurotransmitters are higher in the brain. And when we're with each other, whether in this romance stage, this is when couples could talk for hours on the phone and I only have eyes for you, and it's just amazing. And then the next stage is the attachment stage. And the attachment stage is when we're together because we've now made this attachment. It doesn't mean it's a great attachment, it doesn't mean it's a bad attachment, but we're attached through time, through family, through kids, through we're attached. Yet in those stages, the norepinephrine and dopamine levels oftentimes go down. Serotonin levels go up. Serotonin is what makes us feel soothed and comfortable. And this is when couples can end up slipping through kind of a safe relationship, but not necessarily a good, passionate, connected, alive relationship. Because every relationship needs safety, but they also need adventure. And in the beginning of relationships, there's adventure and maybe not as much safety. And then eventually it could shift the other way where there's a lot of safety, but not a whole lot of adventure, which ultimately doesn't make it very safe, paradoxically speaking. Okay, so let me talk about, so we have this situation. The good news is there is ways to rekindle passion, and I'll be talking about that and how to rekindle a sex life. We will definitely talk about that. Today, again, talking about what factors. Stress has physiological aspects to it as well as psychological aspects to it. The physiological aspect of stress has to do with increase of cortisol. There's something called the HPA axis, and it has a whole streamline of events that happens when there's stress that literally it activates the sympathetic nervous system to the extreme or the parasympathetic nervous system to the extreme. In either case, it can shut off the sex system. You know, when we're in the sympathetic nervous system, we're in fight or flight, and our energy is geared towards fighting or flighting, not to relax, enjoy, feel our feelings, get aroused. That doesn't happen when we're in a stress where our body is experiencing it as a threat, as danger. So if a person is in chronic stress, they might very well be in chronic under sexuality. I understand for some people, they go the other way and they use sex as a way to alleviate stress, but in a typical couple, that's not going to work very well. Stress will definitely interfere with the sex life. There's also psychological aspects of stress. Our minds are busy. We're oftentimes in the survival mode, and just like I said, physiologically, but psychologically, when we're it's like when we're hanging by a cliff, we're not thinking about having sex. Now, it's a little bit of an extreme example, but the thing is that our minds are not into connection, into survival. That's why it's so important to get out of stress, which again, I'm sure I'll be talking about in upcoming talks. There are also medical issues that can contribute to it. I just thought of something else about stress too. Oftentimes, stress also gets us into to-do mode, task mode. And so we become very task-centered as a way to make us feel in control when we feel out of control. And so being in that task-centered mode doesn't leave much time or space or energy for sex or for feeling our sexual self even. So I just wanted to throw that in. Okay, medical issues now. Now, medical issues could be just about anything, but of course, there are some medical issues that directly affect our hormones or directly affect our sexual um, apparatuses. What's the plural for apparatus? I don't know. I don't think it's apparati. I don't think I've ever heard that word before. But of course, there are um, aging issues that interfere, for example, with estrogen for women and could affect their vagina, which can definitely affect one's motivation to have sex. Men having prostate surgery can affect their ability to have erections. Diabetes can affect the ability to have erections. So, again, having a sexless marriage, in some part, one extra thing is lack of knowledge, and that we oftentimes equate sex with just sexual intercourse and what to do with a penis and clitoris and vagina. And there's more to sex than that. Sex goes way beyond that act. And when we look at things more broadly, medical issues may not have as big an effect. But of course, medical issues could take away our energy. People that have chronic immunological issues, um, they definitely can interfere with our energy, and life becomes about just sometimes just getting enough rest or getting through the day. So of course, medical issues can affect us. Heart issues, also certain medical issues will cause us stress. So they all kind of connect, right? And stress and the medical issues combined can take away our sexual desire and our energy for sex. So we need to understand and appreciate when one partner has medical issues. I had a couple where she had a major accident at work and her leg was affected. It was such a problem. It was pain, but she was so limited. And it affected her physiologically via her energy has also made it more uncomfortable to have sex because of her leg problem. But also psychologically, she was so limited and she was down and depressed by it. So medical issues for sure are something that we need to consider as possible factors. Um, Emotional disconnect. Men and women, and I'll say especially women, as time goes on in a relationship, need an emotional connection in order to have a sexual connection. When, especially a woman, feels emotionally disconnected, meaning they don't know what's going on with their partner, they don't feel like their partner is interested in what's going on with them, they can't, they don't share their um, emotions, their inner world with each other. There's not a depth in that relationship. You could get away with it, of course, in the beginning of a relationship because you got those hormones going, you got that lust stage, you got the romance stage. But when you're in the later stage of like attachment stage, which is, again, it doesn't often take too many years to be in that stage, then we have all these factors that really play a part. And emotional disconnect is crucial. So if we are feeling, I don't think you're interested in me, or we don't slow down together. Our life is about raising kids, or if we have kids, or just working a lot, whether we have kids or don't have kids, and taking care of business and taking care of our parents and our in-laws. But there's not time to just slow down and be with each other. That definitely is a big reason why there are some sexless marriages. This involves the ability to communicate through pain, to develop the emotional muscle to stay connected, as I say, through heaven and hell. We need to be able to, in order to have a good sex life in a long-term relationship, we need to be able to regulate each other's nervous systems. That we need to do, and up and down. And I've said this before in other talks, down regulating is helping the person regulate their own stress so that they have less stress. We do that often by caring and listening and being interested and giving the person a space to express themselves and a safe place where you aren't judging them and they can be heard. That's really very important. There's also the upregulation part of relationships where we we um, we do romantic things. We make them feel alive. We make them feel special. We take walks together. We dance together. We do things together that enrich us, that give us an experience of we all, not just parents or householders or house runners, that we're lovers, that we're close, we're emotionally connected. That's really important. And then the last factor that I just want to bring up is unresolved conflict. The relationships that go on for a long time, invariably there's going to be conflict. And some conflicts aren't resolvable in the sense of you can't find a great solution. Life is like that. It throws conflicts at us where there's not really a great solution. But it can at least be resolved to the point where we get each other. It has to do with, again, emotional connection. So if we are a couple that is practicing, and I mean the word practice, practicing emotional connection, we might be in a better space to handle difficult conflict. So again, these two last things go hand in hand. But in particular, unresolved conflict might be where something happened in the past. I had actually more than one couple where they went through. I have one now, but I had one in the past where they went through. There was a termination, an abortion, and they had to do it alone. One was a miscarriage. They had to do it alone. Their partner was too involved, didn't cancel. One had a trip, a pleasure trip with the boys, and probably should have canceled it to be with their partner. And that created a conflict within the woman. Do you really care about me? You're so selfish. Years later, she was still affected by that. They never really talked about it. He never made a true apology and recognizing that he probably made a bad choice and that he had a tendency to be selfish and live in his comfort zone and lack empathy. And in the therapy with me, he was able to really get it. and really demonstrate to his partner that he got it. And so this was the only way this conflict from years ago could be resolved, by her hearing him do a real sincere apology and really owning it, and also seeing changes in him that demonstrated that he was being more thoughtful and considerate of her. So the problem with unresolved conflict really is avoidance. People have a negative thing that happened and they avoid it, and that avoidance oftentimes leads to a weakened connection emotionally, but ultimately sexual too. So those are the four main factors. There are probably more, but those are four probably more general categories. If any of these resonate with you, well, then that makes sense. And in upcoming talks, I'll be talking about some solutions to help you deal with the different factors I mentioned today. So thank you for listening. This is Todd Creager, making the world safe for love.